Welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast, where we discuss business solutions to help listeners develop and implement action plans for true lean process improvement. I am your host, Patrick Adams. Hello and welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast. My guest today is a regular on the show. Katie Anderson is coming back specifically to discuss our Japan trip because we've been there now together. And so there's lots to talk about. But if you are new to Katie, Katie is an internationally recognized leadership and learning coach, consultant, and professional speaker, best known for inspiring individuals and organizations to lead with intention and increase their personal and professional impact. Katie is passionate about helping people around the world learn to lead and lead to learn by connecting purpose, process, and practice to achieve higher levels of performance. Her book, Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn, is an international #1 Amazon bestseller and currently is a Shingo Award-winning book as of recent. So congratulations, Katie, and welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Patrick. It's a pleasure to be here, and it was so great to spend a whole week with you in Japan very recently. And now our chain of learning is even more strengthened with both of our books winning the Shingo Publication Award, and it's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to diving into the conversation, and I don't know how we're going to be able to keep it to podcast length because there's so much to talk about.
That's true. Very true. Absolutely. Well, I want to start just by talking about your book because, again, as of recent, you received the Shingo Publication Award, and you and I were talking a little bit about it while we were in Japan. There was some talk about it. It had been put up for the award, but you hadn't really heard yet, and so you heard. Can you just tell us a little bit about like that whole process, and obviously now, you know, what to go forward, because you're going to have to go receive the award now, right?
Yeah, well, I get to go receive the award, so it's fantastic. And I know you were at the Shingo Award Gala recently receiving your Shingo Award too. So I'm excited to be following in your footsteps. So yes, I'm really grateful to Sam McPherson for nominating the book and me as the author for the Shingo Publication Award. And Sam was a former Toyota employee, so even more just really meaningful to me that the lessons in the book is something that he felt was powerful too. So he put me and the book forward for the award, and we found out literally weeks after we came back from our Japan study trip, and had to keep it under wraps for 3 or 4 weeks until we made the announcement last week at the time of this recording, which was also the book's 3-year anniversary. So it was a really nice way to honor the impact that the book has made and had in the time of it in the 3 years since its publication. And so I'm really deeply honored with this award. And I was talking to Mr. Yoshino earlier this week, and he was really glowing with, awards are external validation of the impact. And, the most important thing to me is that, the writing and the creation of the book was an important process for the two of us, but also to know that people are really learning from it and gaining new insights and knowledge. And so really appreciative of the Shingo Institute for recognizing that impact as well. So very exciting.
Yeah. And so what did Mr. Yoshino say when you announced to him that it had been awarded?
Oh, he's so humble, from getting to spend time with him in Japan. He always is like, oh, it's such a wonderful recognition of your book. He says to me, he really sees the book as my book. And I always say, no, it's our book. I was the author. You're the subject. This is such a collaboration. He's so humble, but you could see the smile on his face. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, Katie. It's well-deserved. You've written an amazing book, and it's obviously to exactly what you're saying. So many people are being impacted by the book and just the work that you guys put into it. So, thank you for blessing the world with all of that information. And obviously, like you said, it's definitely being recognized for good reason. And not just with the Shingo Award, but you've been traveling all over the world with your book and with, just showcasing some of the things that you do. Tell us a little bit about your travels.
Yes, it's been an exciting year. The global and in-person conferences really opened up again. And as someone who loves to travel and connect with people around the world, I embraced this in the last, the last year, but really the last 9 months. I've been all around the United States, but also to Poland, where they've published the book in Polish, to Colombia, they published the book in Spanish. I was out in the Netherlands, I was out in Portugal, where the book has come out in Portuguese. Most recently was in Brazil, where the Lean Institute there is releasing the book in Brazilian Portuguese. And I'm excited. I've signed contracts for the book to be coming out soon in French, Italian, and Chinese, and a few others.
Wow.
So really, really exciting that the lessons are also going to be able to have a broader reach around the world. And the reflection questions and the learning that comes from it, the learning that comes from stories. It's not just a how-to book, it's a reflection book in the same way that yours is as well. It shares experiences and then asks you to reflect on them.
Absolutely. No, that's amazing. And since you brought up Brazil, I saw some of the pictures from the conference and it looked amazing. I mean, there were a lot of people there. They're doing a great job to promote lean throughout the country.
Absolutely. I've been to some really fabulous conferences in the last year. I have to say the Lean Institute Brazil put on just a spectacular conference. They had over 1,500 people attending live. I was the opening keynote for that event, which was really exciting, talking about the book, and then had an opportunity to do a few breakout sessions as well, which I think we might be talking about, and a workshop and signing books. And it was just the level of the energy at that conference, excuse me, and the way they put it on was really spectacular. So if you haven't seen it, go check out the Lean Institute Brazil's LinkedIn page, because they have some really cool video footage of with the drone entering into the stadium, and then all this video footage. It was really cool. And that at the end they had John Shook there, but not in person and not on Zoom. He was in a hologram box, and I was sitting in the front row of the stage, and it looked really like John Shook was totally there in person. So this is the way of the future of having your they can't be there in person, but have it be more than just a Zoom call. So it was very cool. And amazing. It was a thrill to be on stage in front of 1,500 people. So yeah.
Right. And you brought up the workshop. So I'm interested to learn a little bit more, because, you and I talked a little bit, and you told me about how they ran these breakouts, which normally you would have your own room and people would separate and they would go into these rooms and you would, run your workshop in smaller group sections, but that's not how they did it. And so I want to hear about that, but then let's talk a little bit about how you learned about it and what that did for you too. So tell us about their breakouts.
Yes, and what I learned from it, and then what I learned how to respond to it. So so the event has 1,500 people in one room, and they had a massive stage with LED lights, on the stage, and broken into 4 massive big screens so that everyone could see. So I was also invited to give 2 breakout sessions. And I was I'm very used to doing concurrent language with translation, having been in Poland and in Brazil and Portugal and in Colombia as well. So that wasn't the issue. But I made the assumption that breakout session meant how you had made an assumption too. And it was only the week before the event when I had said, I'd like to have I was also teaching a one-day workshop, and they had translated a document for me. And I said, I'd like to have the document also available for the first of my 2 breakout sessions. And they said, well, that's going to be really hard because we're all in the same room. And I was like, what do you mean we're all in the same room? How is that going to work? That's going to be loud and noisy and confusing. Anyway, it was revealed to me, and they had mentioned something, but it didn't really click to me in the past. And a few of the other international presenters didn't click for them either. Because they have done this in past formats and it's been successful for them, but I didn't quite understand the format. I liken it to a silent disco. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, where people put on headphones and then you can't hear outside, but everyone can choose whatever music they want to listen to. So this was the silent disco of conferences, where each of the 4 concurrent speakers, so not necessarily breakout speakers, but concurrent speakers, were segmented on a large portion of the stage. Like this would have been a normal, if you were at a 200-person conference, you would have this amount of stage. So it was segmented into fours, and people would have their headphones on, and they would just choose who to tune into. And instead of the speakers having headsets where the voice was being projected out, broadly into the audience, it was going into the speaker. So I had no idea how this was going to work. Now in practice, it worked out great, but I am so glad that I at least learned of it a week in advance, because I really had to pivot how I was going to structure my events, because I usually do interactive discussions, like turn to a small group and have a discussion on this, and let's have some interaction, or let's have a little practice, almost like a mini workshop, hybrid talk workshop thing. And so I couldn't do that. I wouldn't know who was going to be in my, who was listening to me. Not everyone who was in front of me was going to be, tuning into my session. And so I had to really pivot and rethink how I was going to do these two talks. It was a lot.
And what you did was, you actually came up with a really innovative way to figure out how many people were listening to you, right? Yeah. Because you didn't know if anybody was listening to you. Yeah. You had no way to know if one person or 1,500 people were listening to you, right? So tell the audience a little bit more about that.
Totally. So I took a pause, and I was thinking to myself also, like, how this is what happens to leaders and managers and anyone throughout the day. You have something as you thought was going to happen, and the current conditions totally changed, and you have to pivot and rethink how you're going to respond to it, and how do you get to the outcome that you need or want, but you're going to have to go there a different route in a different way. So I was like, all right, this is just how things happen all the time. So what was the outcome that I wanted for the people joining my session? And so, and what was sort of the theme? I knew I wanted there to be some level of interactivity. I wanted them to have fun. I wanted them to walk away with some tangible insights. I wanted it to be energetic. And so those elements I had to think about delivering in a really different way. And they did have Slido, which is an interactive platform where people can like do a poll, and it shows the live results of the poll. And so I was thinking, okay, how can I use these different interactive elements? But to get to your first point, I had no visibility of who was going to be tuning into my session. And as a live speaker, you really get energy from the audience by seeing people's reaction. But I have to say also, all of our virtual presentations and speaking into basically where you don't see anyone, and how do you bring energy in a totally virtual environment, that actually has really helped. And I found I was able to leverage that. But I was talking to a friend of mine she's like, who had a great suggestion. She's like, you have to leverage the physicality. If it's going to be silent, then you have to leverage your physicality. And so I was like, okay, so what are the things that I can do about this? And I was thinking about our Japan study trip, and the 2 thumbs up, and the Japanese phrase that says "ine," which means it's awesome or it's great, and everyone holding 2 thumbs up. And I thought, well, this is a great story. And I can talk about bringing the Japan study trip, and also then ask everyone to put their 2 thumbs up, also showing me and making it visible. One of the principles of Lean, about how can you make it visible. And so I invited everyone, and then I could see that there were hundreds of people tuning into me, that gave me energy as well. And they too could see who was listening to this session. So that was, and then when I thought of the INE, I actually was able to connect it back to the topic of my talk, which was about purpose, and about how do we, we get so focused on outcomes and results, and we lose sight of the human purpose and that a lot of successful companies, and a lot of the ones we saw in Japan, and we can explore this a little bit more, really focus on people and learning. And then there's a whole connection of INE about how some Japanese companies leverage this building enthusiasm together through putting thumbs up and energy. And so I was able to talk about that and share a video from a previous experience in Japan about visiting a restaurant where they do a pre-shift meeting, and they really bring the energy and use INE as well, the 2 thumbs up. So that was a fun way to bring in Lean principles, make it visible, and give me some energy and the audience energy too. And then I really leaned into storytelling. And so I've actually been on a journey the last 18 months. I challenged myself at the beginning of 2022 to really up my speaking to, I'm a very comfortable and seasoned facilitator, but to bring in much, much more storytelling. And I've really been growing and practicing over all these opportunities. And so I was like, all right, this is my challenge. I'm going to bring in as much storytelling and as much like physicality on the stage as I can. And it was a great opportunity. And even some of the people in the audience who had seen me, say in Colombia, they're like, wow, you've really they could see my growth. And that was really rewarding too, because it's something I've been working on as well. And then I've got so many messages on LinkedIn and other places of people saying one of the most inspiring talks they've ever heard. And just really like weeks later, they're thinking about it and really making changes. And that's energizing to me, that even through a 1 hour talk that you can help inspire someone to see things in a different light and take a different action as well.
That's amazing. Love hearing that. Love hearing the work that, that's going on all around the world and how you're able to be a part of that with your story. And it's amazing. Very cool. And I love that our listeners can learn a little bit more about what's happening around the world outside of their own country. So, and you mentioned the visual aspect. I want to transition to our trip, to Japan. But you mentioned the visual aspects of IME, and it made me think specifically about every time that we left a visit to one of the companies that we visited there, how they would stand outside, the leaders, and wave to us until you can't see each other again. And that's a custom for them. And when you first said it, I was kind of like, really though? And then sure enough, as soon as we're driving away, they were waving like crazy, to just enthusiastically waving to us until you literally couldn't see each other again. And so that was a lot of fun as well. And just experiencing those little pieces of the Japanese culture were so much fun for me. And I appreciate the fact that you invited me on the trip, and we had a blast and met a lot of really great people. But I was thinking about this as I was preparing for today's recording. And I remembered on the first day when we were together, you drew a diagram on the board with like a triangle with 3 categories: Universal, Toyota, and Japanese were the words that you wrote on each of the areas. And this was an exercise that we did. And then you kind of brought it back full circle towards the end, where we had some conversation around this exercise. Can you just kind of talk through this exercise with our listeners and tell them a little bit more about what you were trying to accomplish through that?
Yes. So first I want to acknowledge John Shook. I borrowed this concept from him from actually an article that was written in the Lean Global Network's newsletter from a Japan study trip that he had led for the representatives of the Lean Global Network. And John, as you know, wrote the foreword for my book and worked directly for Mr. Yoshino. So he spent many, many, many years in Japan as well. And so I thought this was a really great exercise for us to use as a beginning framework and then a reflection framework at the end as well. So really asking people to say, how much of all of this is it of lean thinking in practice, or what we consider to be lean thinking in practice, is specific to Toyota culture, to Japanese culture, or there are universal principles, actually universal on the top. And then ask people just put a rating for themselves and reflect on the reasons why they rated that. Mm-hmm. And then as we went through the week, to reflect on that, how much of it is due to success because of being in Japan, or how much is just universal humanity, and how much is something specific that Toyota did. And it was interesting to see on the last day where everyone for the most part shifted in some ways, and people shifted in different ways, but how it really did move more towards that universal side of not feeling like it was just purely Japanese or purely Toyota. But again, everyone had a self-rating. What was your experience of that as the receiver of that exercise?
Yeah, I thought it was great. It definitely made me think a little bit. And I think, one of the biggest pieces for me that came out of that was I learned so much about the Japanese culture, and I really started to understand how things that I thought were very much Toyota specific were not Toyota specific. They were actually came more from the Japanese culture, and then they were an enabler to the success of the Toyota production system versus like being something that Toyota created. For example, like 5S, for example, we learned a lot more about the culture and how, kids learn from a very early age to 3S their areas. And they literally even use those terms like, and so, initially, in my mind, I was thinking that was something that came out of Toyota. And so it's just little things like that. When we went and visited the school and learned, about how kids, again, are taught at a very early age to take care of their areas, to respect, the not just their own personal things, but to respect the areas around them that they're going to visit, that they're going to. I mean, they're taught to put trash in their pockets and bring it home and throw it away. I mean, just little things like that, again, I think helped really to enable the success of the Toyota production system versus being the reason why Toyota was so successful. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I fully, there are influences from the Japanese culture that really have enabled what the Toyota production system and then what we've translated into being lean. And Toyota has also done some things that were helped overcome some cultural challenges from being more Japanese or traditionally Japanese culture as well. And really, I think shaped the best of sort of both worlds. So I also would caution people not to think, well, it only can happen or be successful because of these Japanese cultural elements as well, because there's some things we had to overcome and many things which are universal around our humanity. And like, that was so much of the focus of the trip too. Like, very important to see. I wanted to show how did Toyota's influence in their suppliers in that region, some Japanese cultural elements that are really important. And then also exploring some universal things around joy and happiness and learning and a sense of purpose, and how when we can connect on all of that, then that also helps enable everything to happen.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick. So sorry to interrupt this episode of the Lean Solutions podcast, but I have an important question. Are you tired of the old ways of doing business? Feeling overwhelmed by inefficiencies and wasted resources? It's time to transform your approach and embrace the power of lean methodology. Welcome to our revolutionary Lean Solutions Academy with courses on lean methodology. Whether you're a seasoned executive or just starting out, our courses are designed to equip you with the knowledge and skills that you need to streamline your operations and maximize your success. Our courses are packed with actionable strategies and real-world examples to help you apply lean principles to your own business. You'll learn how to optimize your workflows, reduce lead times, and deliver value to your customers more efficiently. From value stream mapping to 5S methodology, Six Sigma courses, Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt, Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, we cover all the essential tools and techniques used in lean. You'll gain a deep understanding of waste identification, continuous improvement, and problem-solving methodologies. Our online platform allows you the flexibility to learn at your own pace from anywhere in the world. With high-quality video lessons, interactive quizzes, and downloadable resources, you'll have everything that you need to succeed. By enrolling in our lean courses, you gain a competitive edge, increasing your operational efficiency and unlocking your business's true potential. Join the ranks of successful change agents who have embraced lean and revolutionized their organizations. Enroll today and you'll get $100 off your first course, which practically pays for any of our e-learning courses. We want to make it so easy for you to jumpstart your lean journey. Don't miss out on this incredible offer. Visit our website now and claim your discount at www.findleansolutions.com/academy. Now, back to the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it just made me think about Mr. Yoshino talked about creating a culture of openness. And, that, again, that was something that, we had extensive conversations about the fact that, there are companies in the US that we go to that I would say, have a culture of openness. There are Japanese companies, but there are also companies that don't have that, and how we had some really good discussion around how to create that, a culture of openness, a culture where people are willing to share and have discussions among each other without fear of repercussions or whatever it may be. And so, that was another area that I thought was really, really interesting for me. Also leadership, the different leaders at the different companies that we visited, had a huge impact on me. Loved hearing from their hearts. And, again, just back to that culture of openness and them willing to share the struggles, the challenges. I mean, we had some conversations with one of the leaders of a company that, talked about sales were declining from an automotive manufacturing perspective, and that they had to pivot and diversify their offerings, and that it was a really difficult time for them. But then, we obviously went down the road of, did you lay people off? And of course they said, no, we didn't lay people off. We invested in developing their skill sets and tried to think differently about, their jobs and, how they could contribute in other ways. And so, some really, really great conversations around that. What was your feeling on that piece with just creating a culture of openness?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the key themes of the companies I want to choose, is like, how are they really leading genuinely with people first? And that comes from a place of starting with themselves and being open and transparent and creating that place where people are all able to, it goes back to my book too, and the simple statement that Mr. Yoshino made. It's like, leaders set the direction, they provide support, and they develop themselves. And it starts with yourself modeling the ways of the culture that you want to create. So if you want this culture of learning that's people-centered, how do you start with yourself to model that? And so I come away inspired by all of these leaders too, some of whom I've heard, I don't know, countless times over the last 8 years since I first met some of these companies when I was living in Japan. And it is inspiring because they're super genuine about leading from the heart and inspiring the mind, and also achieving the outcomes that they need for their organization. But we talked about how in the West in particular, but us as also Japanese companies too, a lot of times we get focused on the results and the outcomes, and we see that as the primary, like, how do we, what are the business results that we need? And then the secondary is, how do we develop people? But these organizations see, how do we invest in people as the way to achieve the results? So I think we have it backwards, and we get so focused on the outcome. I think back to a quote that I love in the book Tree Ring Management, which is written by the chairman of one of the companies that we visit. And he's considered the sensei for many Toyota executives. And there was this quote in the book that really resonated to me when I first read it. And he said, "Profit is excrement. It is the natural byproduct of a healthy, functioning company." And if you really focus on like the people and the heart and the mind, everything else will sort of come from that. Toyota also said, like, we make people so that we can make cars.
Yes.
And so we flip it. And so these leaders are really demonstrating that through that openness and through the clarity of the challenges we need to overcome, and then providing that environment where people can contribute their ideas and feel supported, that they're going to get there as well.
Right. It made me think about one of the things that one of the leaders said to me when I asked about going to the Gemba, and how often should you go to the Gemba? Or how often are your leaders going to the Gemba? If we were to walk around and follow them, how often would they go to the Gemba? And his response to me was in question form, and he said, "How often how much time do you spend with your children?" And so his answer was basically saying exactly what you say, this is my family. These are the people that I care about. These are the people that I am invested in, that I pour into. Like, I'm seeing them all the time. I'm going there, and I want to understand their problems. I want to understand their struggles. I want to be able to remove roadblocks. I want to be able to help them so that they can be successful. Like, these are my children. So I'm seeing them all the time, and I just thought that was such an interesting way to answer that question, and really just goes back to the importance of the people there was no question of, well, I go to the Gemba when there's a problem with, we're not hitting our numbers, or we're not doing this, or no, it was like, these are my people. I'm out there all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And it's similar. I wasn't on this study trip, but it was the last one I ran before the pandemic, and we were visiting one of the same companies, and we on this trip too, there were a lot of questions, or what are your key performance indicators and KPIs? A similar question was asked in 2019, like what employee engagement surveys do you use? How do you tell if people are engaged or learning? And it was a very similar answer, but I think it was a different company. And he said, they kind of looked quizzically and said, well, what do you mean? Like, do you survey your family? Like, because you're out there and engaging with them if they're happy or feel connected. And so this because of experience. And so if everyone's doing that, then you have that, you have that experience. So yeah, so then all of us say, well, how can we do that? It's because we need to strip away to the essence of what's really our purpose as leaders. Is it all the tasks, or is it really supporting people to be able to achieve the big challenges that we need?
That's right. Exactly. Katie, what would you say is your favorite place to visit when we went to Japan this last time, or maybe it's a company that was earlier, but any favorites that you would say is?
It's so hard because there's so many. There's different things that I learn from different organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pausing because that's like saying my absolute favorite.
Right.
I will say that I really value going to Ina Foods, which is the company we're talking about. What's the chairman who wrote Tree Ring Management. It's a bit of a journey to get out there in the Japan Alps, which is beautiful, and their happiness is their purpose, and they really, really embody that. And I just having that long-term view and the uniqueness of that is really inspiring to me. And it's also outside of sort of the beaten path of a lot of, we get outside of just the main manufacturing area of the Nagoya, Toyota City region, and outside some of the main cities, and getting out to see just a different type of company as well. So that's certainly a favorite of mine. I have many other favorites though. So it's really hard.
And it's also hard to say that's not your favorite when you stop at the sake brewery that they own just before.
Yes.
And that was really amazing too. So
yes, well, that was an add-on. Yeah, that was great. Well, I learned that they invested in this. It's a beautiful story actually, and it's nice to also offer some sake tasting to my tour participants. The Ina Foods invested in this sake brewery. It's about half hour, 45 minutes away, and because they wanted to invest in their community, the sake brewery was having trouble at the time financially, and also so were the local rice farmers. And Ina saw this as an opportunity to invest in their community, because they invest in the sake brewery, they will be able to then purchase rice from the local farmers. And so then their community's surviving and thriving as well. And now the brewery is like world renowned. It's winning all these international awards, and the community has employment. And so it's just it's a great story, and great sake too. So
yes, for sure. I actually bought 3 bottles and brought them home for my leadership team. So as gifts to them. So, and really cool because they have on the box itself and on the bottle, on the label, they have the tree rings, printed on there, which is really neat. The crazy thing is you cannot buy that book. It's crazy expensive. But we had the PDF to be able to read, but so for anybody that has it or can get their hands on it, what an amazing book. Just talking specifically about slow incremental growth of an organization and the importance of, not buying into, massive growth too quickly, because that can be detrimental to your organization. And so they've focused on this slow incremental growth over time, that they've kind of said, this is why we've been so successful and been able to manage the growth over time, because it didn't get out of control, right?
Yeah, totally. You were reflecting on that and how you're taking some of those principles in to your team as well. When we had recently, we had a post-trip reflection session, because I love reflection. And yeah, it sounded like it really was impactful for you, thinking about how, as a leader, a manager in your own company, how can you use those principles?
Absolutely. It was. It made me think about, like, everyone wants to be successful in the work that they're doing, whatever it may be. And, sometimes we think that success means that we have to grow very quickly or take huge strides, and that's not necessarily the case. I mean, like I said, that could be detrimental to your organization if not done properly. And but slow incremental growth, structured over time, I mean, that makes sense, right? So
Totally.
yeah, it was good.
Well, I'm going to turn the question on you. What was your favorite place or experience on the whole trip?
That's a tough one to answer too. I have a hard time putting my finger on one. They were all very impactful. And I actually, I have my notes here from the booklet that you gave us. And, for those that are seeing the video here, these are my notes from every page. So I have just so many notes from all of the different places that we visited. And it's so hard to say one was better than the other, as you struggled with. But I would say I really loved visiting the elementary school. I think that was for me, it was, just seeing seeing how the culture is, created in Japan, and then understanding how that then ties into the success of the Toyota production system. I think specifically about the fact that they don't have janitors in the school. And so then you ask, well, who cleans the school, right? And the answer is the kids clean the school. They literally shut down for 15 minutes, and they each have their own areas. And I think they rotate that around, and they all go and they clean for a given period of time. And then again, that teaches them to take care of their areas. It teaches them to be respectful of their areas, because no one wants to, clean up a big mess in the bathroom. They know that they're going to be the ones cleaning it later on, so they keep it clean on a regular basis. And so then from there, you make the connection to going and visiting, one of the factories where they say, where they're like, we don't have maintenance personnel on staff here. And then the question is, well, who takes care of the machines? And they're like, well, the operators take care of the machines. And so you see the connection, like where it's like they're taught from such an early age to just take care of the things that are, within their area of ownership. And it's just a really, really neat connection, So I think that was probably one of the larger impacts on me, was the school visit.
Yeah, I love it too. And also, a lot of people do say that they were surprised that going to an elementary school was the highlight. They thought, all these the company visits, but really also getting to connect with kids and see how they prepare the lunch together, and the patience and the respect and the cleaning and the regret for waste, and how how different it is from most of our experiences in the West. Interestingly, also Japan is one of the clean across the board, like Tokyo and big cities, so clean. It's because people take care of their space. You mentioned there's no, there are very few trash cans, like even in big cities, and people take their trash with them. It's not strewn around the streets, and it's so safe and clean. And I've really always appreciated that, but because it's invested in. And so again, go back to, like, as leaders, if we want to create a culture is just the accumulation of the behaviors that are become the accepted norm. We have to teach people that, and we have to model that ourselves. And so we too can create these cultures. It's not like, oh, well, it's just Japan. They have put intention around that as well, of developing their children. And it's, not saying that employees are children either, but it's about, like, instilling the habits and behaviors that we want as well. And then creating the structures to enable it, not just saying, oh, you have to go off and do it. So I think about all those principles about how do we adopt these things or lead them in our organizations too. What are the structures? What are the principles? What are the behaviors? And how do we model it and support it too?
So true. I still remember as a young supervisor walking the plant floor with a leader who I still am in contact with regularly. And I remember her stopping and reaching down and picking up trash on the floor. And she's an executive leader at this large company. And I was surprised. And she was like, could see that I was surprised that she's picking up trash. And I actually felt bad. I'm like, why is she having to pick up trash in our, on our factory floor, my factory floor? And, she said to me that if you just step over this, then you're telling everyone around you that that's okay, that it's okay to just throw trash on the ground. But when they see you picking it up, immediately they know that it's not okay, that it should not be on the floor. And, so that behavior in itself is helping to establish the cultural norms that you will have within your organization.
Absolutely.
So it's pretty amazing. But I love everything that we could talk forever about the trip. We almost need like 5 or 6 episodes to go through all of the different learnings that we had, in Japan. But I do want to ask you, Katie, in reflecting back on the trip itself, in listening to the people that participated and listening to the reflections, for you yourself, what are some of the things that you are saying, went really well, maybe some things that, that you're changing for the next trip? What are some of those learnings that you've had as the facilitator of the Japan trip?
Yeah, so it's always an opportunity for, PDCA or, doing the check adjust. So I always appreciate that. And, we had to take a pause for 4 years in the pandemic. So that was great. So the things that I am really happy about is that people on our reflection call last week, people are like, this was life-changing. This was life-changing. And so to me, that makes me really happy that it was such an impactful experience, because it is an investment of time, of money. But to have an experience that feels life-changing is wonderful. And so that's a huge positive for me. It's interesting. I like in the post-trip survey too. And this happened in every trip. People are like, oh, when you said it was going to be intense, it really is intense, because we pack in a lot of things on the agenda. And then some people say, oh, they were such long days. And then I'll ask the question, well, what would you cut out? And they're like, well, I wouldn't cut out anything. I'm like, that's the tension. It's just going to be, it's a big full week, and we give different times for downtime, but you come to Japan and you really want to get the most of it as well. Some things that I'm adjusting for, it's every trip is more, I'm thinking, how can I do even more external setup? So I did a bit of that this time. In the pre-pandemic, we didn't have so many remote calls. I had maybe one pre-trip call, but I had Mr. Yoshino do a pre-trip seminar, and we brought in more of that before the trip. I'm going to do even more of that for this time, so that we can really leverage, opposed to having lectures or seminars in a conference room, we can hit the ground running and get out to Gemba, get out to the experiences, leverage the time on the buses for discussion. Of course, we do have reflection time later as well. Sure. So those are a few of the changes, but I'm just really happy. We also had a question, and I thought there was in our reflection question that some trip participants were getting questions from, their colleagues about, well, what were the technical tools and processes that you learned? And they're like, we learned a few, but that wasn't the focus. And that's not the focus of my trip. It's you will see and experience tools and process and, like SMED and visual systems and Kanban boards and all of that. But the focus is of the leadership and people principles behind it. And so when everyone's saying they feel inspired and so much more equipped and more energized about how to really create transformational change, then that makes me happy. And also the amazing cohorts that get brought together. Like, I love spending time with you and all the people on our trip as well. So absolutely. So this is I'd say it's minor tweaks around the edges, but sometimes I keep some core elements, and then, don't want every trip to be cookie cutter exactly the same. So I'm excited for trying a few new things on this upcoming trip, and already planning for May of 2024, and likely a trip in the fall of 2024 too, but we haven't set dates for that. So reach out to me if for those of you who are interested in joining.
Yeah, there definitely were some other aspects that we haven't even touched. We haven't even scratched the surface on, with, some of the tools, the bullet train, and, the 7-second miracle, the changeover of the bullet chain. I mean, that day was super impactful for me too, even though, that's not an area that I work in regularly. Just hearing the heart of those leaders and hearing about the transformation stories and hearing from the people that are actually there experiencing it. I mean, those were transformational stories for me too. So
yes, and this gets back to the lean and operational excellence and cultures of learning can apply in any industry, in any country. It just what it will look like will be different. What the challenges you face are different, but the principles still apply. And going back to that leadership that focuses on people first, you will be able to enable the outcomes that you need. And so it's great to see across, and it's intentional too. For the way I curate and construct the agendas is to have a breadth of experiences, from Toyota and its suppliers to going out to different industries, to seeing other manufacturing companies too, and how they're trying to learn as well and apply these concepts. So the whole thing comes together. And also, I really enjoyed a few people like yourself and myself. We had a small group of runners, and we would go out before a few days. We had a day in Nagoya and a day in Tokyo, and that was super fun to get some exercise and go. Then you got to see other things that you wouldn't have seen on the formal tour. So always great to get up and get a little exercise as well.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun for sure. I had a blast with that. And got to, like you said, see things that we wouldn't have otherwise seen by running through the streets, in the different cities that we were in. So that was a lot of fun for sure. And you mentioned you do have a few more trips coming up. You mentioned you have one coming up shortly, not too long from now, and then a few more next year planned.
Yes. So my October trip is totally full, and we're in the final stages. We just had actually the day of our recording, our first pre-trip call. And then I have open enrollment for my trip in May, so the second week of May of 2024. And then looking at putting dates on for fall of 2024, likely in November this year, but I need to work on the details of that. But there's spots still available for May of 2024. So don't wait, because the trips do fill up pretty quickly as well. So reach out to me. You can go to my website, kbjanderson.com/Japan trip. And also Patrick wrote almost daily reflections. So go check out Patrick's, they were on LinkedIn, right? That you were writing. Yep. Yeah. So LinkedIn articles for each day of his learning. So really great. And Isaac Mitchell also wrote daily reflections and a few others as well. So if you're wanting to get more details, go dive into some of Patrick's reflections. You can learn more. Maybe we'll come back and dive into some of those deeper focused areas of learning as well in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll put a link to Katie, to your website. We'll put that into the show notes, and we can throw in a couple of those reflection articles, and even your blogs. You have a ton of blogs on your website that lay out the trip itself and learnings from there. And then, I'll close just by saying that there may be another trip in our future together. Right, next year, maybe sometime.
Maybe we have to
teaser there. Throw it out there. So, anyways, Katie, as always, it's great to have you on the show. Love the Japan trip. It was an amazing trip. Definitely life-changing for sure. Recommended by all means. If anybody has questions and they want to talk to me, give me a call. I'll tell you all about the Japan trip. Yes, thank you, Katie. And again, congratulations on your book, Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Congratulations on your Shingo Award. Just amazing.
Thank you.
Super cool. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks, Patrick. And I love seeing your Daruma above you too. So
yes,
from the trip. So thank you so much. You're an important part of my chain of learning. And I encourage people to reach out to me too, connect on LinkedIn, visit my website, and let's continue the learning together.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe. This way you'll get updates as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please give us a review. Thank you so much.